light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. Today I just wanted to offer a few thoughts and reflections on the general subject, I suppose, of times when feeling uncomfortable is actually a good thing. When we're looking beyond simply, do I feel comfortable? Is this convenient? Am I happy? To saying, is this worth it? Is whatever I'm doing worth whatever uncomfortableness or inconvenience that I might be experiencing? Every athlete going through practice by its very nature are activities and things that include uncomfortable, inconvenient situations. They're exhausting, they're adversarial, they may even be painful. In renovating a house, a construction worker, in my understanding, you cannot build a house without being willing to endure discomfort, inconvenience, weariness, exhaustion, dirt, perspiration, all sorts of uncomfortable things. It is because we are willing to make those sorts of, sacrifices, I suppose you could call it, being willing to do what's uncomfortable, being willing to struggle, being willing to put some effort into it, being willing to show up for the part that doesn't feel good, that we prepare ourselves and equip ourselves and build our muscles and train our skills so to perform as we really want to perform in those moments when it really counts. It's by going through all the rehearsals and memorizing the lines that the beautiful Broadway play is finally put together. It's not like everybody memorizes it and shows up for the first performance. You have rehearsals where you figure out if the blocking works, if the blocking meaning the movements on stage, if somebody needs to wait for their entrance until the other person has exited the stage, if you have to wait for the music, and how does the orchestra know when to start playing? Well, in a lot of television and stage production, there's this hurry up and wait and hurry up and wait and hurry up and wait to get something done. One of the metaphors, I suppose, that is often used for the necessity of struggle in life is the basic process of childbirth, which I suspect any woman who has been through that can tell you. If she had anything to say about it, it wouldn't last 9 months. That's way too long. It's a process that unavoidably includes struggle and discomfort. And only because somebody believes in creating a new life does anyone consent to go through it, to go through those experiences, and of course afterwards being so thankful at what was accomplished that all the struggle just doesn't quite matter. When I was in a bodybuilding competition in 2006, and for a year and a half doing 2 hours of exercise 6 days a week, and finally showing up and putting on this well-rehearsed routine and doing everything I could to look my absolute best on stage, and being awarded a silver medal for my efforts in bodybuilding, and how wonderful I felt in that moment. And if you had asked me in that moment, does a year and a half of effort, all those hours of discomfort, all those weeks of no fried foods, no desserts, no ice cream, no high fats, no pizza, no, more boneless, skinless chicken breasts and fruits and vegetables than I could possibly count. All the restricted diet stuff, and the hours upon hours of exercise, the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of repetitions, the sore muscles, the day after day after day after day. And for a year and a half, I couldn't directly see what it was all for. I had this idea in my head that I was going to go to this competition and participate, but I had no idea what would happen, whether I'd be successful or not, who the other participants would be, what the judges would think. There was no guarantee anywhere in the process, and it was all uncomfortable and inconvenient. And I made all kinds of sacrifices in order to have the time to do 2 hours a day. There was social engagements and other projects and creative things that I specifically didn't do because I chose to give the time to preparation for this competition. And in the final analysis, the main, to me, the main focus of the competition was the free posing round. There were compulsory rounds also for those familiar with bodybuilding competitions, but the one that really mattered to me was the free posing round, because that was the round of competition in which I would be on stage all by myself. And they would not be, the whole audience and all the judges would not be looking at anyone except me. And in that moment, I had to be ready to do my absolute best. And for a year and a half of preparation, 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, all of that came down to 90 seconds. And then it was over. After 90 seconds, I had to commit myself to being regularly and consistently uncomfortable, to doing what was not convenient, to believing in something that was not guaranteed, that I had no way of knowing if I would succeed or not. I had to have faith in my own efforts to show up and do it every single day, and that no matter how tired or how frustrated or how much schoolwork I was dealing with, because I was going through my master's program at the time. I actually received my master's degree about, it would have been almost a year after I received the silver medal in bodybuilding. Though when you're getting a master's degree in theological studies, I suppose it's understandable if virtually no one at school really cared that I won a silver medal in bodybuilding, because bodybuilding doesn't have a lot to do with theological studies. Oh well. I decided, though, that I wanted to be as developed inside as outside, and as outside as inside, so that as I was developing my mind, I was also developing my body. And whether anyone else at the graduate school I attended even cared whether I went to the competition, much less how I did, really wasn't the point. It was about redefining my abilities and what my life included and what my relationship to the world around me was. Redefining it specifically by what I invested. And part of that investment was embracing things that were not comfortable, things that were not convenient, things that weren't pleasant, things that didn't make me happy, because I believed in what they might produce. Obviously, there are a lot of people who wouldn't have made those choices, who would have looked at the whole thing and said, this is crazy. You don't even know that you're going to get anything out of it. But in a way, isn't that exactly the same choice that every mother who chooses to give birth has to face? She has no way of knowing what this child will become, or what this child will be, what the child will become, how the relationship will work out, whether the child will grow to adulthood or be killed in an accident before they're 10, whether this child will become one of the statistics of sudden infant death syndrome. There's such a myriad of things that can happen. At the time that a woman bears a child, she may be married and anticipate raising this child within a nice, stable family, and find out 4 years later that she and her husband are getting a divorce, and she's now going to be a single parent. All of these questions, all of these uncertainties, all of these inconvenient, uncomfortable possibilities, and still this mother would believe in bringing a new child into this world with everything that's wrong in the world. I recall seeing a plaque once that said, "Children are God's opinion that the world should go on." Every child that's born is a chance for something new and wonderful to happen. Each of us, when we were born, was a new opportunity for the world to discover something new and wonderful. Very often the world doesn't know what it's missing because so many people come into this world and are not supported in being the unique person whom they are. They're told to fit in, or to dress like everybody else, or don't ruffle feathers, or let's be nice, let's make everything polite, instead of saying nice is good, happiness is good, polite is good, but over and above all of that, we need integrity. And over and above all of that, we need truth. There cannot be legitimate integrity or legitimate happiness if there are lies and deception and misrepresentation. There cannot be a fully developed person who is living to satisfy someone else's expectations all the time. If what is most important to you is others' approval, the treasures that God has hidden within you may never see the light of day. If you're going to share the unique and beautiful and wonderful things that you alone can share, I believe it's going to mean at some point, in some hopefully intelligent way, it's going to mean embracing what's uncomfortable. It's going to mean looking in the mirror and being honest with yourself. I'm uneducated. I need to learn more. I'm not very good at this because I haven't practiced. I'm overweight and I need to exercise. None of these things make us less valuable as people. They simply are things we can see when looking in the mirror that are uncomfortable truths to face, but they're not just uncomfortable truths to face, they're opportunities to find a better way to be who and what we are. Growing up, I often heard people use the perhaps overworn statement, life isn't fair. And when I was pondering that a couple years ago while composing one of my monthly newsletters, it occurred to me that life isn't fair because it's not life's job to be fair. It's our job to be fair. It's by us learning to be fair with ourselves and with each other and trying to create a fair world that we take all these uncomfortable things and we actually give them meaning and purpose. And when I received that silver medal for my efforts to develop a particular physique, all the uncomfortable hours of sore muscles and sweat and denying myself all sorts of things that I really loved, ice cream and pizza and what have you, didn't matter. There was something so wonderful about the moment of receiving that silver medal, of actually having someone finally notice all the effort I put in, that all that stuff that was in the past, the previous year and a half, it didn't matter. It wasn't important. When you have something in which to believe, something like a relationship, something like the development and the sharing of the gift God has placed within you, something that takes you beyond yourself, but in a way that brings the best parts of yourself along. That kind of interconnection and wholeness. And when we reach those points, hopefully, if we reach those points, hopefully we do, the effort of getting to that point somehow isn't important anymore. When I hike to the summit of a 14,000-foot mountain, and I get to the summit and look around and go, wow, someone might say, but what about the last 4 hours of aching muscles and tired lungs and slippery rocks and everything else getting to this point? And when you're standing on the summit of the mountain, it's like, it doesn't matter. I'm happy to be here. I'm glad I didn't give up. I'm glad I kept going in spite of the fact that it was inconvenient and uncomfortable. I'm glad that I was able to think about what I was doing enough to know to follow the trail, to know how to find a way if the trail disappeared. Because there's a lot of mountains where the trail is obvious at certain points, and then you get to a boulder field or a rocky area, and the trail disappears. And you see the summit over there, or you might see another piece of a trail over there, but you can't see any trail between the two. So you find a safe way to get from where you are to the next piece that you can see. And each step of the way, it's not like reminding yourself at every switchback how big and how long and how difficult it is to climb the whole mountain. You simply look at from here to the next turn, from here to the next step, maybe from here to the next ridge. And you go that far, and then once you're there, you focus on what comes next. When uncomfortable things happen, we don't need to turn them into major crises. They're simply an uncomfortable thing happening. All of us have been through uncomfortable things, and all of us have triumphed over uncomfortable things and moved beyond them. So to have yet another uncomfortable thing come up is really not a big deal, because we have the ability to respond to it and to answer it, to put one foot in front of the other and keep going and not give up. And if it's especially difficult, that might mean just focusing on the next step. There have been some mountains I climbed that were so steep and so exhausting, and the rock on the trail was so slippery that I just had to focus on one more step and one more step and one more step. And I didn't worry about how I was going to get from here to there. The mountain I climbed last summer, Mount Antero, there was the last section, almost the last section was along this very narrow ridge. And from 100 yards away, it didn't look like there was any place to stand. It was just a very, very sharp edge. When I got right up to the edge of it, well, I could see that for the next 2 or 3 feet, I could step here, and then I could step there, and then I could step there. And I just kept going one step at a time, and after about 20 minutes, I was at the other end of the ridge. But the steps that I needed to take were not visible from a distance. They weren't visible until I got right up to them. And not being able to see them in advance felt uncomfortable. Being on them and looking down at this steep ridge, and even looking more than 10 feet in front of me, I was very uncomfortable with the idea that I couldn't see a trail all the way across the ridge. But as long as I just looked at the next step, I found a way to do it. In spite of how uncomfortable it was, I found a way. And I made it all the way to the summit, and it was wonderful. And all the struggles along the way didn't really matter anymore at that point. It was swallowed up, in a sense, in the joy of having reached the summit. And yet, among hikers, there's an expression that is sometimes used a little bit derogatively, called peak bagger. The idea that somebody climbs a mountain just to get the summit, just to say they climbed the mountain, and that's all that's important. I think it's like a story. There needs to be a beginning, there needs to be a middle, and there needs to be an end. There is something so incredible about reaching a summit that I've never had to wonder whether it's worth it. There is an attentiveness to everything that happens along the way that says the journey was not unimportant, and it is significant what the journey includes. Whether it's scrambling over boulders, whether it's hiking a dirt trail through a forest, whether it's climbing up a loose slope of sand and gravel, all sorts of different possibilities. In order to appreciate the summit, I think you have to be aware during the journey. Neither of those will happen, however, if you're not willing to make a beginning, if you're not willing to leave the car in the parking lot and go to the trailhead and start hiking, one step at a time. When I first, in the very, very first mountains that I climbed when I first moved to Colorado, there was another gentleman who came along on one of those hikes who taught me what he called the returning hiker's prayer. And I said, the returning hiker's prayer, what is that? And he said, when you have climbed all the way up and you're coming down, and it always seems longer coming down than going up for some reason, you finally get back to the car. And he climbed in the driver's seat and put his hands on the dashboard and said, "Thank the Lord for Henry Ford." Because at that point we knew we didn't have to walk anymore. We get in the car and we get to drive the rest of the way. And yeah, there was something about seeing the car again, because it somehow, seeing my car in the parking lot each time I've gone hiking has been like reconnecting with the outside world, because as long as I'm on the hiking trail, it's all wilderness. There may be a few other people around, but there's no power lines, no phone lines, no houses, no, in most cases, no cars, no, none of the things that we associate with urban environments, or with modern life, I suppose, for that matter. I mean, there's a sense in which when you're on a hiking trail, if you were there in 2007 or 1950 or 1853 or 1722, all the way back through time, it wouldn't look any different. This is what the mountain has looked like for hundreds of years. And so there's a sense in which hiking a mountain is very timeless. In some ways, that's very uncomfortable to be aware of being in a timeless place, because so much of how we understand ourselves is by relating to the time within which we are born and live. In other ways, I think it opens up the possibility of understanding that there is a part of us that extends beyond the simple life, the simple date and time of our life, of our physical life on earth. That there is something eternal hidden within each of us, that there is something that can appreciate a place that hasn't changed significantly in 300, 400, 500 years, or 1,000 years. And so I think by going on these hikes and allowing the uncomfortableness of sore feet and tired ankles and weary knees and aching backs and adversarial conditions and all of this, that there is a sense in which we are stepping outside of our own time and we're connecting with a bigger universe than what we normally see in the workaday world living in a city or a small town. The point of this whole discussion, though, is coming back to saying, if it's uncomfortable, it's not necessarily bad, and it's not necessarily anything from which to run away. So often I hear people pursuing bliss and happiness and prosperity and so forth as if that was what mattered the most to them. But every person I know who's ever gotten those things has basically immediately set up a situation in which they could stagnate and in which there was no further personal growth. They, in most cases, they didn't use their new position to learn a new language, volunteer for a nonprofit organization, help their neighbor with a particular challenge of some sort. All sorts of things about relating and having a relationship with the world around us, about having a relationship with ourselves, where we expand what we can do and how we think and what we understand. The thing, I guess, in all of the rambling thoughts I've shared within this past half hour in the show, that I guess I'm hoping that somewhere in all of that there's something for each viewer, for each person watching the show, that will inspire you to go through the mud, brave the cold, find your way through the heat, whatever the adversarial circumstance is, to use your ingenuity and adaptability to go beyond anything you've done so far, and to find on the other side that you're more of a person than you've ever been, that you have actually grown, that you've expanded, that you've become bigger than you were, that you understand things you didn't understand before, that you have a relationship with others and with the world in which you live, perhaps even a relationship with the divine that you didn't have before. It is not comfortable or convenient to learn our life lessons, to learn unconditional love, to learn transcendent wisdom. It takes effort. It takes work. If you want to reap the harvest from the garden, however, somebody's got to be out there doing the weeding and the planting and the hoeing and the watering. If the work isn't invested, the plants won't have what they need to produce the harvest that you wish to enjoy. Expecting a harvest where you didn't put any work in leads, in my opinion, only to disappointment. There are certain things that are required, certain things that make it happen, that make it possible, just as there are things that made each of us possible. And so a certain gratitude should be paid, but also a certain willingness to invest ourselves so that others can know their beginnings, so that there can be many, many, many more beginnings, so that there can be inclusivity, because we understand that everybody is a remarkable treasure chest of beginnings and possibilities and perspectives, all of which, in some way or another, could be empowering to us if we would simply communicate and love and ponder and be willing to put ourselves out there honestly and with full commitment to say everyone matters and live like we really believe it. And to understand that when we say everyone matters, it means us too. We matter. We matter in the way we relate to everyone and everything around us. Thank you very much for watching.